Well, let's stay a bit longer on this subject. We're now joined by Raymond Gilpin. He's the chief economist at UNDP's Regional Bureau for Africa. Raymond, thank you so much for your time. What do you think or make of Kenya's decision to join the Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank, and how does it align with its long-term economic strategy?
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Kenya, like most African countries, are looking for diverse sources of financing. And joining the Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank is one way to do this. I think, but the question that has to be asked is, at what cost? For most African countries at the moment, we are seeing a lot more debt stress. Apparently, over 750 million Africans live in countries that pay more for debt service than they invest in health and education. So accessing more money is one thing, but doing it at a cost that's as affordable is really, really important. And this is where how countries are rated by credit ratings agencies matters, because that gives a window into not just debt carrying capacity, but also ability to repay.
I mean, even as we think about how countries are rated, as you mentioned, tell us how loans from a group like this Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank would compare with other lenders, the IMF, the World Bank, for example.
Yeah, thank you. The IMF and the World Bank do have more concessional lending available. So the interest rates, the duration to repay much longer, a lot easier to carry. The decision that countries have to make is for strategic investments like infrastructure, energy transition, even technology investments, African countries need a lot more money than the World Bank, the IMF alone are able to provide. Currently, for the Sustainable Development Goals, for instance, the estimates are about $250 billion a year between now and 2030. And so being able to access much more than the traditional financing options is an imperative for countries. But it has to be done in a way that's consistent with their longer-term development goals, and also with an eye on debt sustainability.
I mean, Raymond, it's interesting you say that, because some of the protests that we've seen in certain African countries, the protesters say African governments need to live within their means, as opposed to borrowing more to, meet some of these goals that you've spoken about. How concerned are you about debt levels generally across the African continent?
Debt levels are pretty high, and they have been growing, partly because some countries are investing in infrastructure, technology, etc., and also partly because following the last couple of decades, when a lot was done to address debt stock, and countries had a little bit more space, they did contract a lot of debt. And so now, when it's time to repay, we're seeing countries struggling to be able to repay. And recent shifts in the global financial markets have meant that for African countries, the average for bond issuances is about 3 or 4 times the amount that developed countries pay. And so we're seeing countries that could afford it the least being in positions where they have to pay the most.
Raymond, we're going to have to leave it there. Raymond Gilpin, chief economist at UNDP's Regional Bureau for Africa. Thank you for joining us on the program.